All right, everybody, welcome to the Thesis Workshop in 2023. We are going to help you craft an amazing one-sentence thesis that will help you close on capital from LPs with nothing else. So let's get started. The first and most important thing to understand about a thesis, especially if you're the founder of a venture capital firm or managing partner of a venture capital firm, the thesis is you, okay? It's not some abstract concept that you're going to get on paper and, all of a sudden, because you put this formula together, you're going to get tons of money. No. The thesis is you. It's why you're qualified, what you're interested in, etc. And it's got to capture that perfectly. So you got to start asking yourself questions in order to develop a world-class thesis. Questions about yourself. What are you passionate about, right? Because that's what you're going to be funding with your fund. That's what you're going to be working on. That's what you're going to invest with conviction around. What changes do you want to see in the world, right? You're starting a fund and you're making investments, and those investments are going to take 5, 10, and sometimes more years to mature. So you can't be thinking about today. You've got to be thinking about the future, because the investments you make today will change the world in the future, and you need to have a vision of the future to make investments today that are going to be lucrative, right? Because you say, hey, by investing in this company, I see a future that looks like this, and this company will make it happen, and that is why it's going to be successful. Who do you want to help succeed, right? Are you working with, people you don't like? Of course not. As a venture capitalist, you're going to be tethered to the success of a startup for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and possibly more if they go public. So who are the types of people that you want to be working with? Who are the types of people that you want to be helping with? How old are they? What do they care about? What are their passions, right? How are you going to help them to win, right? It's super important that you know the types of people that you want to help in order to enter the venture capital world. And then where do you have a strong network, right? Because you may want to help a certain type of person succeed, and you may be passionate about that, a certain type of business or opportunity, but you may not have a network there. So you have to be super practical as well and say, okay, where is my network today, right? Where do I have the strongest contacts? Where have I had the most success, right? And you have to build off of your strengths as well as your passion, as well as who you want to help, etc. And then you need to understand what makes you special, because limited partners are giving you money to go in the world and execute on a vision that you are an expert in, right? You can't take money and, go into a field you know nothing about. Not at least with your first fund. In your first fund, that's almost impossible. They're betting on you because you are the expert. You are special in a certain way. You have a network, you understand this, and you can get opportunities that no one else can get. So what makes you special? And when you have this right, you're going to have a scenario that looks like this, where it's a Venn diagram, where there's you, the manager or managers, you have your thesis, and then you have an LP archetype, a certain kind of LP. And that LP gets so excited about you and your thesis because they're passionate about what you're working on, your background, and what makes you special. that they give you money to deploy in the real world, right? And it's a magical thing. And that's why you don't need a deck, okay? You don't need a model. You just need a world-class thesis to get millions of dollars to invest. Now, with that said, there comes a point in fundraising where you will need a deck and you will need a model, but not at first. Because if your thesis is that good, this Venn diagram will happen to you, and you will find an LP archetype, a type of LPs that just find your thesis so engaging, they will write you a check based on a 15 or 30-minute meeting. And this happens all the time. You know how I know? Because we've started 350 firms at VC Lab, and the best closers don't use a deck. They don't even send their deck out. They just talk about their thesis. Okay? So what you're going to want to do now, oh, wow, that's great. All I need to do is like do my thesis and I'll raise lots of money. Well, it's easier said than done. Okay? Now, what we've done to make the process easier, and it will still take you probably 2 months of solid work to get the thesis good. And I don't mean like 2 months of like, oh, let me think about it for a few hours here or there. I mean 2 months of like 30 to 40 hours worth of work a week. You will get your thesis to a point where it's something you can share with the world and get commitments. But that's going to take you a good 2 months. And when I show you the sentence, and I'm sure you've seen it before if you looked at our materials, seems really easy. Fund name is launching an X million-dollar stage venture fund in Country City to back the geography sector market companies with secret sauce. It's like a Mad Libs, okay? I'm even going to tell you what to put in there, but it's much harder, again, done than said, because you've got to tune everything to you. And the secret sauce is almost impossible to do. So you can get everything else right, and your secret sauce may take you 100 versions, right? And that 100 versions will take you 1 or 2 months to do, testing with LPs, refining, going back. But I'll tell you the best knowledge that I have on how to do it right now. So first and foremost, this is not a War and Peace sentence. This is 37 words. This is not the Bible. This is not some long treatise that you're writing. It's a 37-word sentence. So you take this, and it's 37 words, okay? And no adjectives, no superlatives. And it's not the best or the most or the original or the first. You 37 words, no adjectives. If you want to use an adjective, use a number, okay? If you feel like you want to say you're the first, don't say it, right? 37 words. And so let's just start with each piece of the thesis. So how big should your fund be? Well, I'll tell you, 2, 5, or 10, right? And people are like, no, I want to do a $50 million fund. Look, I just read a story about 2 young ladies in the UK who launched a $25 million fund. It took them 4 years of fundraising to close it. 4 years. So if you want to spend the next 4 years of your life fundraising 100% of the time, you can raise a $25 million fund. That's totally doable over 4 or so years, okay? Instead, if you want to raise fund 1 and start deploying, you start with a $2, $5, or $10 million fund, preferably a $5 million fund. Guess how big Sequoia's first fund was? $3 million. Guess how the #1 performing fund of all time was lowercase capital 1, okay? He wanted to do a $10 million fund and failed and did a $7 million fund. So this is the #1 performing fund of all time, didn't even hit its target of 10. He failed and hit 7, but ended up getting 280 some odd time return. Okay, so going back, you can do a big fund and torture yourself, raising for years and years and years, or shoot for a number you can hit, deploy fund 1, and then raise a bigger fund 2. And if you have questions about this, happy to discuss them, but just trust me, you want to do this. And by the way, if you are going for a $5 million fund and you do really well fundraising, you might get to $10 million fund, right? And that's great. You can oversubscribe. Oversubscribing is the goal. Undersubscribing is a failure. And a failure you're going to have to carry with you for the rest of your life, because everyone knows lowercase capital 1 shot for 10 and only got 7. However, they got this 280 X return. So, you know, people can forgive it, but unless you have a super return, no one's going to forgive you for undersubscribing. So it's always better to go lower and oversubscribe. Now, you're going to pick a stage. Basically, for most of you, because your fund size is small, you're probably going to do pre-seed or seed, maybe Series A. But that's it, right? You're not going to be doing like a late stage fund. I mean, you know, look, it's theoretically possible, but you're just not going to have enough money to deploy. So you're going to do a small fund focused on pre-seed or seed, maybe Series A. That's just the reality of it. I can save you a lot of time. You're not going to do 2 stages because your fund is small. And your thesis isn't law, okay? It's a guideline. So if you say pre-seed, you do 70% of your deals in pre-seed. You may do some angel deals, you may do some seed deals in that other 30%, but it's not like every deal needs to be a pre-seed deal. Just 70+% of your deals need to be a pre-seed deal. Now, what's the city or country? Well, that's super easy. Where do you live? LPs want to know where their manager's butt is 70% of the time. Sure, you go on vacation, sure, you travel for conferences, but if you're in London doing an Africa fund, LPs are going to be super skeptical, right? They're like, why are you investing in London, in Africa, if you're based in London, right? Why are you investing in this region if you're based in some other region? So in the thesis, the city or country is literally where you, the manager or managers, are, okay? And if there's one manager in one place and another manager in another place, then you can say the country or region, but generally pick a manager and that's the city or country what you list, okay? Geography is where the fund focuses, okay? But this is super easy. A lot of people will say things like, I'm going to focus everywhere in the world. No, you're not, okay? Do you have a network everywhere in the world? You have a network in Bangladesh, South Sudan, like, you know, Chile? Unlikely, right? So where is your network strongest? That's your geography, okay? And it can be a region. It's better if it's a set of countries. And here's why. Limited partners have to deal with taxes and other regulatory things everywhere that you, the manager, invest, because the vehicles are pass-through vehicles. So you're investing their money and through a pass-through vehicle that they're an owner in. And so if you invest in South Sudan, or you invest in Chile, or you invest in Bangladesh, the limited partner needs to deal with South Sudan, Chile, and Bangladesh in their taxes, reporting, etc. And guess what? Most limited partners don't want to do that, all right? They're like, nah, I like Europe. I'll deal with Europe taxes and legal issues, and that's it. And I don't even want the UK because it's not part of the Europe. Or I only want the UK, I don't want Europe. Or I only want the US, I don't want anything else. So you may say, like, I want to do all these places. You may not have a network in those places, but the LPs don't want it. So back to the point, look where your network is strongest and focus on that geography. It can be a region, a country, etc., but focus where your network is strongest, and that will be appealing to LPs as long as it's not too broad. Okay. Again, sector is super easy as well. Like, you may love AI. You may be like, I love ChatGPT. I want to invest in ChatGPT. But unless you have experience in AI, that's not going to be the sector you focus on. Maybe you're like really experienced in healthcare and you love AI. You're going to have to let the love of AI go and do healthcare. Because going back to that Venn diagram before, it's you, right? No experience in AI, your thesis in AI, and the interest of the LP. And the LP is going to be like, why are you doing AI? You have no experience in AI, right? So it has to be an area where you have your best track record, okay? Where you have succeeded the most in the past. And I'll talk about what that looks like now. So secret sauce is what your experience, either as an individual managing partner in a solo GP fund, or the group of managing partners if you have a team, what makes you unique? And you got to measure it, okay? And here they are in order. There's 7 things. We have an article on this. Maybe Niels, you can post an article in the chat. How many exits have you had in this space? Preferably as an investor, but you could also list it as a CEO. You have $4 billion of exits in the space that you're working in. That's pretty impressive. I would definitely take a meeting as an LP. Your investment performance, right? I've got a 10x markup in the sector that I'm interested in. Well, that's pretty impressive. I'd probably take a meeting. How much money have you helped these companies raise or follow on rounds, etc.? If it's a big number, I've helped these companies raise $500 million in capital. That's impressive. I'd take the meeting. Now we're moving into things that matter less. Okay. It doesn't mean they are not impressive, but if you can nail one of those top 3 things, and by the way, your secret sauce is in a hodgepodge of 5 to 10 different things. Your secret sauce is one thing that you're exceptional at with maybe a second supporting piece of data. Maybe. One thing, maybe a second supporting piece of data. Okay? And so find in this list of 7 the one thing that you're good at, and it better be preferably in the top 3. And if it's not, by the way, you can start making angel investments right this second. Okay. And then you're going to start getting stuff in number 1 or number 2 right away. Right. Or you could start advising companies for number 3 and start getting number 3 right away. But let's cover the 4 through 7 quickly. Measurable sales increases. Well, this is helpful, right? I've helped 4 companies close $1 billion worth of enterprise business. Okay, I'd probably take the meeting. Companies help their programs run. You know, I've recruited the top executives at the 5 leading startups in the space. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Maybe I would take the meeting. Now we're in the maybe I would take the meeting range. I've run 13 accelerator programs that have created 2 unicorns. Okay, I probably take that meeting. That's a probably, right? Size and network. I run a community with 14,000 AI programmers uh, who staff the major companies and startups in the world. Okay, that's interesting. I might take a meeting. I've have, 13 years of experience in AI building large language models. Okay, that's kind of interesting. I probably take a meeting. But again, in those 4 through 7 areas, the LPs are going to be like, that's interesting. Maybe I'll take a meeting. You can nail one and you'll always get a meeting, right? With your background. In fact, you'll probably also even get investment. So if you don't have 1 through 3, that's okay. All right. I don't want to say it's impossible for you to start a fund. Lots of people have started funds on 4, 5, 6, and 7, but you better make 4, 5, 6, and 7 pretty impressive in order to get that LP interest and get that LP to close. Now, here's a sample thesis, sort of incorporating the different things that I've said. I think it might be a little long. Purple Ventures is launching a $5 million angel fund in Brussels to back European government technology startups that leverage the partner's experience running a network of 1,600 startups and 12 unicorns in the space after holding various political roles across the EU. So it's a little long. It could be wordsmithed down, but what I wanted to share with you here is, again, this person doesn't have 1, 2, or 3. It's a hypothetical, right? So this person doesn't exist. Let's start there. But they also don't have 1, 2, or 3. So, but they have a network. So they say, look, I have this network of startups and 12 unicorns. That's impressive in the space. So in the government technology space. And then they back it up with a second piece, right? I say, so you can have a primary and a secondary after holding various political roles. So that's just demonstrating their expertise in the space, right? And this is, if I were interested in gov tech, as it's sometimes called, I would probably take the meeting, right? But as I said, it's not as awesome as if the same person said, I've invested in 10 startups that have a 15x TVPI. I'd be like, damn, I'd take that meeting regardless if I'm interested in GovTech or not, because those results are impressive, right? But this is a maybe, and only if I'm interested in GovTech. Now, I mentioned earlier, and I'll say it again, general solicitation, everybody, is illegal. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not the general solicitation police, weedy, like you're in trouble. But it's not just illegal in America, it's illegal in Europe, it's illegal in most of the world. And basically, the rules are slightly different, but they all follow the following principle. In order to pitch a limited partner, you need to, 1, know them. You have to have a pre-existing relationship. They can't be a total stranger. And number 2, you have to believe and have, very good reason to believe that they are wealthy. And if those 2 things are not met, you really can't pitch people, right? So you can't be putting your thesis out on the internet. You can't have a website. You can't have a website that has a contact us form. Now, I know a lot of you are like, wait a minute, and you can eliminate these questions from the Q&A, Niels. A lot of you might be like, wait a minute, I see people doing this all the time. Yes, people murder, steal, and do illegal things all the time. That does not mean you should do illegal things, right? Well, they kill, so I should kill. No, don't kill anyone, and don't generally solicit, okay? General solicitation is illegal. Now, the penalties in the US are pretty bad. You can get banned from fundraising for anything for like up to a decade, right? So like no bake sales, no running a startup, no doing a fund, no fundraising for you, right? Europe, it's jail time. So, that's not so great. I don't know what the hell Europe's thinking. I don't even know what the hell the US is thinking. I think these rules are stupid, but they are what they are. So you can follow the rules or risk your career. You choose. But I'm just telling you, do not generally solicit. Now, if you put a thesis out there, if you have a website, blah, 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 number one, take it down. And number two, change your thesis, right? That's if you've done that, unfortunately, that's what you're going to have to do. If you have a website, if you put your thesis out there, you're going to have to take all that stuff down and then change your thesis, and you should be fine. The general solicitation happens when you actually take the money from someone and it can be proven that you've been out there promoting stuff and they're like, well, that's pretty bad. And you can get reported any kind of different way from an angry LP, a competitor, blah, blah, blah. And you just do not want that drama. So again, do not publicly share your thesis, okay? And I'm just trying to help you here. So for everyone here that came in maybe a little late, this is the thesis template. Take a look at it again. It's super easy to do, like all things in life, easy to do, hard to master. It will take a lot longer than you think to get your perfect background into this one sentence format that is so strong that an LP, upon hearing it, will say yes. And I'll tell you what we see and we know. So if less than 1 in 10, so like if 1 in 15 people express interest after you share your thesis and eventually maybe even express interest in investing, that's not very good, right? At 1 in 10, you have a thesis that's interesting and good, but not great. At 1 in 5 people that you tell your thesis to, if they express interest in investing in 1 in 5, then you have a good, if not great thesis. And when I've built the thesis, I've gotten it to 2 or 3 in 5 that I just tell the thesis to, who will say yes to invest. And that's excellent. So think about that. 2 or 3 out of 5 people that you just tell your thesis to are like, that's awesome. I'm interested in investing. And you can get there too. It's just going to take a little bit of work. So again, when you get it right, your thesis is you. And I want to thank you for listening and being part of this opportunity. Now, what we're going to do from here is we have a bunch of questions in the Q&A. I'm going to stop the screen. Niels is going to filter them and read them out, and then I am going to answer them for you.
Okay, let's dive in. First question from Anna Smith. Any tips regarding secret sauce if you are a new manager without an investment track record?
Yeah, so as I said before, you have the 7 areas that you want to go through and see which, so I'm going to give you a process, right? So let me list the 7 areas, then I'm going to tell you a process on how to figure it out. So obviously, total exit value, investment performance, total capital raised, measurable sales increase, companies helped or programs run, size of network, years of experience. You will have at least 2 or 3 of them. You definitely have years of experience. Everyone does. You're going to have some network. It may not be large. So you have that too. And hopefully you will have like companies help, programs run, or one of the others as well. So you'll have 2 or maybe 3 that you can choose from. And so what you want to do is you want to write a thesis with each of the ones that you are strong in, right? And then test them, right? So go to what we call confidants, which are people that you know, and right, because you have to know someone, and preferably people that you know that are also wealthy, but if they're not wealthy, that's okay. You can just start with people you know, and just say, hey, I want feedback on my thesis one-on-one. I wouldn't put it in email, whatever. Get them on the phone and read them the two versions and say, like, which resonates better with you. And then based on what resonates with them, that's your thesis.
Question from Diago. How do you make fund economics work with smaller funds and lower management fees? It's tough to hire a proper team with limited management fees.
Yeah, guys, no team in fund one. There's no I in team, and that's because you don't have a team. It's just I. All right. So fund one is you. All right. It's not just you conceptually, it's literally you also working on the fund alone. There is no help. All right. That's called fund one. But every single fund, everyone, like there's some, like if you're like, but there's this fund over there, Sequoia, $3 million, lowercase capital, $7 million. I can regale you with the best funds in the world, and their starting fund size is pretty puny. Now, if you're like some sort of rock star and you've had amazing success, maybe you can do a bigger fund for fund one. It is theoretically possible, and we've seen some people do it, but it's super rare. So the economics work out. You don't have a team, so you don't have to pay anyone. You don't take your management fees 2% every year. What you do is in year 1, 2, 3, and 4, you take let's say 4% management fees, which is more than enough to cover your salary and expenses. And then later years, you might do only 1% or even 0.5%. So you do what's called a management fee waterfall in order to get enough money to operate on for a micro fund.
I can take care of this question. Will the deck be shared after the presentation? We will not share the deck. However, you will receive an email with the recording. And also, if you want to stay up to date with all of our recordings, we recommend subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can find the link in the chat. Okay, Uday is asking, should venture studios also have a focus on industries?
Yeah, look, let's take a step back and talk about venture studios in general. So most venture studios don't need a fund, but they end up with a fund. So if you're at all successful as a venture studio, you're going to have a fund, right? So if you're going into the world of a venture studio, now, if you're just like, I want to try a venture studio, yeah, don't bother raising a fund. But if you're going to be like, I know that I'm going to do a venture studio, I know I'm going to be successful doing it, then you got to go where the ball is going, not where the ball is. And the ball is going to be where you're going to have a fund. So you're going to have a venture studio entity and a fund entity. Niels can put in the chat a link to our venture studio article that shows the diagram of how this is set up. And so you're going to build a fund pretty quickly from day one, or roughly in the beginning. And so you're going to need to have a thesis statement. And that thesis statement can actually apply to both the venture studio and the fund. So most people that we see building venture studios create a thesis statement, and it's the same for the studio and the same for the fund. Carol saying, I believe that the VC industry has massive ethical issues. That's what I've been told, attributed to LPs' expectations. How can we identify and avoid unethical or toxic LPs? Carol, that's not exactly correct. Look, if you say who's venture capital has horrific ethics, terrible ethics. I mean, it might actually be the single worst ethical industry out there, up there with oil and gas, like running American prisons, like death squads in Iran. I mean, it's pretty terrible. All right. They treat people like crap. They don't care for really anything but returns. They glad handle people. I mean, it's terrible, horrible ethics. And like, so you look at the ethics of the general partners are horrible. The ethics of the vendors are horrible. The ethics of the LPs are not the problem here, right? I would say the ethics of the LPs on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 5. The ethics of the G, with 10 being bad. The ethics of the GPs are probably like an 8. The ethics of the vendors are also roughly an 8. So in the scheme of ethical problems of the industry, the LPs are not the problem, right? And I would argue, if people are saying, well, the LPs are forcing me to be unethical, like no one can force you to be unethical. Okay, let's just start that. It's like, pull the trigger, like, okay, like she told me to pull the trigger. It's like, whoa, you pulled the trigger. Like, you know, like, what, the voices in my head told me to pull the trigger, right? Like, so at the end of the day, an LP may be unethical, but if they ask you to do something unethical, you're the one doing the unethical thing. So you are in fact unethical. So we don't deal with any of that, right? The venture industry is broken. We're fixing it. All our managers sign an ethical oath of conduct. We enforce that. We run all the back office, all the systems. We do not have ethical problems. Our managers do not have ethical problems. The LPs in our network do not have ethical problems. We are the solution, right? And so how you fix it is you join something that has ethics first, like VC Lab and Decile Group, and then you will not have ethical problems. Okay.
We have 2 questions that are fairly similar about contact forms on a VC website. Is it illegal to have them? And yeah, I would have mentioned, do you want more information? Contact us.
Yeah. So look, general solicitation is illegal. Contact forms are not illegal. Okay. Now, if your fund is 100% closed, not 50% closed, not 10% closed, not 90% closed, 100% closed, it is closed, then you can do whatever you want. You can talk about your fund all day long. We have a fund of funds called Decile Capital. I can talk about it all day long because it's 100% closed. Okay. So I'm not soliciting. You can't invest in the fund because there's nothing to invest in. So I could literally talk about it all day long, have a contact form, all this kind of stuff. So the issue is when you are fundraising, you cannot talk about your thesis. And for most new managers, you really shouldn't have a contact us, a website or anything, because let's say an LP comes in through the contact us form, that you have a point at that point where it's like, that's basically general solicitation. They came in unsolicited, you followed up with them, they came in, someone finds out about this and reports you, you could face serious problems. You know, personally, the fund could be shut down. Depending on the jurisdiction, it might involve jail time. It's super bad. So it's just like, don't even bother. Like, why waste your time? Don't do it. All right, let's keep rolling.
Or a micro fund focusing on healthcare, which needs substantial money and has a long-term time to get the return. How will the fund survive in the years before succeeding a successful exit?
Guys, right. So you're going to be like, most rounds involve numerous investors. So if you're a startup, you're going to do a round and you're going to have, 5 or 10 investors per round in the early stages, sometimes more, even 20 or 30. And in the later stages, it gets less, like there may be in a series A 2 or 3, maybe up to 5. And by the series B, it might be 1 or 2. So in those early stage rounds, you're going to be one of a number of investors. So you don't need a lot of money to be an investor. You just need to have an entrepreneur agree to let you invest. And then you have what's called an active investment period, where you're deploying capital. And when your active investment period's over, it's 2 to 4 years, you're going to start a new fund because you're done investing, right? When you're after 2 to 4 years, you finish deploying the capital. You get less management fees if you're following a waterfall, and you'll start fund 2. And fund 2 will be larger, and have more management fees, and you'll go through another 2-year cycle and then start fund 3. And then fund 3 will be larger, etc. So you'll be fine. That's how the business works. You just keep starting funds and building your AUM, building your fees, and then you'll have enough money to get a team and everything else.
We have a question about our application deadline. So our next application deadline is August 7th, this Monday. How often do we do these cohorts?
We run, well, okay, so there's the Venture Institute, which is a training program, just if you want to learn about VC. And then we have VC Lab, which is a program to start a venture capital firm. VC Lab, both of the programs are free. VC Lab is the leading accelerator for venture capital firms in the world by a large margin. We created 174 firms last year in 2022. According to PitchBook, about just under 400 firms were started worldwide last year, right? So we're an enormous part of the entire venture capital market worldwide. We run that program, VC Lab, 4 times a year. And so roughly once a quarter is an intake. For everybody here, if you're planning to start a venture capital firm, join cohort 12 with the deadline this Monday, August 7th. You will have a shot at forming your fund and being what's called vintage 2023. If you go to cohort 13, you might be vintage 2023, but very unlikely you're going to be what's called vintage 2024. We've had a lot of good vintage years, okay? But 2023 is looking to be the best vintage year of all. Vintage year of like all time, okay? Vintage year is more determinant of fund success than anything else. To give you an example, you could be a top decile, a top 10% fund, and perform worse than an average fund if your top decile fund was in a bad vintage year and the average fund was in a good vintage year. That's how big the swing is. So you could literally be one of the very, very best funds and perform worse than an average fund depending on vintage year. Because what happens is great companies get formed in certain times. And it so happens that we are the culmination of a perfect storm of those things in 2023. Lower valuations, market correction, mass layoffs at tech companies, blah, blah. That's all happening in 2023. It's like kid in the candy store kind of stuff. So it's looking like this will literally be the best vintage year of all time. So you want to try and get your fund set up this year to take advantage of that swing in the returns that happens by being in a good vintage year. I'm guessing we're going to have a few good vintage years, but like everything, like there'll be one vintage year that's like just great, a couple that surround it that are good, and then you'll have some bad years, right? So I think we're at the peak vintage year right now, which might be the peak of all time.
We have another question about the accelerator program. If you're selected, will the team provide feedback on the thesis and or provide opportunities to workshop it?
Yeah, we have 2 meetings a week in the accelerator. One is an AMA, which is just to discuss things, and we actually go through individual theses in the AMA. And there it's fine because everyone, it's not general solicitation, it's private. It's not public. And you will find investors in the program, but again, everyone in the program is, so the definition of wealthy has to be accredited, and everyone who runs a fund is accredited because the act of running a fund makes you accredited. So it's a safe environment to share your thesis in. And you will have opportunities to share privately and opportunities to share publicly, and plenty of opportunities to get feedback. So again, 2 meetings a week, plus you'll have working groups, etc. So your thesis will get amazing very quickly.
Any thoughts on open-ended versus evergreen funds?
Yeah, don't do that, guys. Like, okay, there's no evidence in the world at all that either open-ended or evergreen funds work. And people are like, well, Sequoia is doing an evergreen fund. Well, let's point to the fact that Sequoia is going through a massive amount of drama right now, and their evergreen fund isn't really an evergreen fund. It's like a place where they can put their top performing companies that time out, and their 10-year funds, they can roll them into a longer term fund. And so it's not a relevant example. It's like, well, GE does this, so I, as a shitty little startup, can also do it. No. So you're a new manager. Your job is not to innovate on the model, okay? The model works great for funds under at 100 million or less. The 2 and 20 model is a beautiful model for funds at $100 million or less. It doesn't work so great at the big fund level, right? And maybe there needs to be innovation. Not your problem. Don't waste your time. I'm building a tech company, so I'm going to write my own database. Said no one ever that survived, right? And you're not going to invent your own model for venture capital. Use the 2 and 20 model. Those other models don't work. There's no proof that they work. Giant waste of your time. And here's how your LP meeting will go. Hi, I'm da-da-da-da. My thesis is blah, 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 blah. And I'm doing an evergreen model. And they're going to be like, tell me more about the evergreen model. And you're going to educate them for 30 minutes on the evergreen model, and you'll have not talked to them a single thing about your thesis, and they won't invest. I'll move faster because we have lots of questions. So, and get rid of the redundant or bad questions. And now here's what we need to do. Everybody take a minute, scan the questions that are there, use your thumbs, upvote the ones that you think are best, and we'll get through all the upvoted ones as much as we can. Let's roll.
Should we be prepared to discuss expected returns of the fund when pitching to LPs?
Guys, sort of. You're going to have 3 scenarios. One that's like 2 or 3x, one that's 5x, and one that's 10x. And if you do really well, you're going to get to the 10x. If you do okay, you'll get to the 5x. If you do so, I would just focus on your thesis first, and come to like VC Lab, and we'll help you do the model and get all that figured out. But what I just basically said is the answer.
What makes a VC Lab applicant the ideal applicant? What are the top things we are looking for?
We're going to do an information session. Maybe you can put a link into the chat to the information session, and I'll cover all the application process. Just get your application in. We're actually doing pretty good on applications. We're just under 2,000 right now. We'll probably get above 2,000, which is sort of what we normally see. Maybe as high, the highest I think was 2,700. I don't know if we're going to get there on this one, but it will be above 2,000. Get your application in. Honestly, the best thing you can do right now is get your application in soon, because a lot of people wait till Monday, and then we get like a gajillion applications on Monday. And the problem is that at that point, the number of slots in the program, because we're accepting people every day, gets less. So your best shot of getting in is not even having a great application, it's just getting your good application in sooner, because if you get a great application in later, they just might not be enough room.
A strongly worded question. I want to help startups and make money too, but I don't want to turn into one of those Patagonia vest wearing idiots with the IQ of an average scammer. Sadly, it truly seems like the club you must belong to via co-investment, co-deal sharing, etc. How do I avoid it? Any non-diplomatic
Yeah, you
advice?
guys, that's a stereotype that's changing. Okay, that type that look. If you look around the world right now, most VCs fit the stereotype that you describe. However, that stereotype is changing. We've launched 350 funds. To give you a sense of scale, there are roughly 5-ish thousand funds worldwide, right? We'll launch probably this year a few hundred funds, and next year a few hundred funds, and a lot of funds die, right? Because the managers retire or whatever, they haven't done very good succession planning. So we're fixing the industry. So just be yourself and launch a fund, right? And everything will change. It is changing. Any best practice for connecting with LPs? I'm referring to general relationship building. Yeah, look, the first thing you do is write your thesis. Once you have a really good thesis, you have to start figuring out what your LP archetype looks like. Niels can put a link into the chat with the LP archetypes, and then you're going to figure out who your LP archetypes are by testing. It tells you how to do that in the article. And then you're going to have to work to build your network and relationships in that community. Which model would you recommend for first-time fund managers, a venture studio, or a regular venture capital firm? Like, guys, you can't just launch either. It's not, these are extremely hard things to do. It's like, you're asking me like, hey, I want to climb Mount Everest. Should I use a Sherpa or what, or not, or go solo? I mean, like, it's super hard, right? It's like to launch a venture studio, you got to have all the ability to launch a fund, which is super hard, and then all of the ability to build world-class companies from scratch, which is super hard. So unless you've built world-class companies before and you're on your second, third, or fourth world-class company, you shouldn't be doing a venture studio, right? Like, I could do a venture studio because I've built like lots of world-class companies. In fact, public companies, private companies, $2 billion of exits. And I have probably right now over $1 billion of companies that I've founded that are operating, right? So, and that's just me. And then I've helped billions more. So you got to be really amazing to do a venture studio. Venture fund is less, you need to be less amazing, but it's not easy, right? And as I said, the venture fund is you. So you've got to find what makes you exceptional to launch the fund. All right, let's keep rolling.
Do we have any reference article that outlines the estimated
Yeah,
cost?
there's no cost in launching a first fund. It's just time, right? So, I mean, it's not zero. I would say that the main cost is time, because you're gonna have to dedicate, maybe as much as a year of your life without getting any salary, right? And so that's the most expensive thing, because anyone here can go get a job, and like that job, is what you're sacrificing, because you're gonna have to spend a year to launch a fund. And so that's the biggest cost. And then the outside of that, a few $1,000s here or there, but it's not, you could probably get away with not paying it. There's no cost. It's really time. And if there are ways you can make things better and faster, more efficient with, let's say, up to $20,000 of money, right? That can definitely help you do everything faster and more efficiently, but you're still going to be in the roughly a year time frame without salary.
Is it viable to do a fund if the LPs are mostly in China and the portfolio companies are in Silicon Valley?
No, like China, guys, China is like, first of all, let's start with the fact that China has problematic issues in general. Okay. It's not really an open society. There's a lot of spying and espionage that's happening. There are currency controls where you can't get money in and out of China. So a lot of Chinese investors amass wealth outside of China and then try and like get that, which is basically borderline illegal to begin with. So you really and then you have to parcel through all this stuff to figure out like, is this legit or not? All right, we're at the hour mark here. And so what I want to do is we can continue. Let's do a few more questions, Niels, and then we'll wrap for everybody. But I haven't been seeing upvotes. So we got through all the upvoted questions. We'll run a little bit longer, but I would ask you, if you want me to go longer, at least upvote some questions and I will get to those upvoted questions. So is VC Lab for managers joining existing funds or raising their fund 2 or fund 3? Okay. So VC Lab is for what we call general partners or managing partners that are starting fund 1, fund 2, or fund 3. If you're joining a fund or whatever, and you're not a general partner and you're not a managing partner, and you're not raising fund 1, fund 2, fund 3, that's not the program for you. If you're joining a fund, let's say as an associate or something like that, and you want to learn about the industry, we have a program called Venture Institute. You can read about it. Maybe Niels, you can put a link in there. It is free as well. That's coming in October, and you can sign up now. Last time we had literally like over 1,000 people sign up in less than a week. So we're going to try and do a bigger cohort of Venture Institute, but that's going to be interesting because like I think there's tens of thousands of people that want to go to the Venture Institute, and we can't, like, we can maybe get a big class of a few hundred, but we certainly can't take everyone. Okay, let's keep rolling.
Experience aside, what is an ideal GP archetype based on the FI entrepreneur profile?
So the FI entrepreneur profile isn't really ideal for the it's literally what it says, an entrepreneur profile, not a VC profile. On Go VC Lab, I believe under Accelerator, there's who should apply, and that provides, I'll put that link in, Niels.
Okay.
I just got it here. I got to switch to everyone. So I'm putting the link in the chat. That goes through the archetypes for different ideal venture capital candidates right there. Is it possible to run an ethical or sustainable VC? Absolutely. People do it all the time. In fact, we only start ethical VCs. So we started 350. And so, yeah, definitely the answer to that is yes. What are your thoughts on solo GPs? Do I have to find a partner? No. So you want to be a solo GP unless you know someone very, very well. So you've had a working relation with them for 5 years or more, and you share a vision, then you can start a fund with them. But otherwise, you're going to go solo. So if you know someone really well and you share a vision about the future with them, you can start a fund with them, but otherwise it's solo.
Do people who are selected for the Accelerator program have access to a Slack or WhatsApp group to talk to other participants?
Yes, we have. So the program has 3 components. You've got a curriculum of activities that you do every week to build your fund. Number 2, you've got mentorship and AMA sessions every week to ask top experts in the field about the process of building your fund and things that you're dealing with. And then number 3, you've got a vibrant and active community that includes Slack, working groups, etc. It's probably the most active community that I've ever seen. So we do have community tools like Slack. We have also free tools, like a whole system to run your fund called Decile Hub, and their community tools in that as well, including a pretty awesome large language model I'm just going to take a second here and show it because it's so cool. So I'm going to just, guys, wait till you see this. So we've built an amazing tool that if you go, it's called Decile Base. You see it here, it's in beta. So you go here, and it's a combination of a Stack Overflow, so you can ask questions, and a LLM. So you could say, like, what is a capital call, for example? So anything you ask, and then it will only answer based on the expert built answers in the LLM. So the LLM can only source material that's in the expert answered knowledge base. So if you ask something, for example, like, who is Taylor Swift or something like that, it won't have an answer because it's not in the yeah, no answer. Right now, that's because it only sources the answer from the knowledge base that's been done by experts. So we have tons of tools like that, the whole back office tools, all that, all free, all for people that come in. And let me do this. Maybe, yeah, I'm going to leave you with this. Okay, guys, I want to answer more questions. Here's what we're going to do. I didn't get to all the questions here, and thank you for upvoting them. I'm going to post on LinkedIn later today. You can follow me. Maybe you could put my LinkedIn on there, Niels, for them to follow. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'll post, and I'll say, if you have any questions about venture or your thesis, post it here. Post your questions in. I'm traveling, but I should have internet access, so I will do my best to answer everyone's questions on LinkedIn. But I'll leave you with the following thing. A lot of people were asking about ethical. I see the question about Georgia, and you're probably wondering, why do we give all this stuff away for free? We're giving like millions of dollars of software that we built that would cost you tens of thousands of dollars a year to license from like Affinity or whatever for free. And the reason we're doing it is we want to fix the industry. Okay, the venture capital industry is deeply broken, and it funds everything that we use. Everything that we use. It funds companies like Yeti, and it funds, Apple, and everything. Right? In the modern world that we are using, probably Microsoft, Google, like everything. Right? And it's unethical. And so the world is not going to go in a better direction until the people that fund the future of humanity are ethical and care about making the world a better place. So our goal is to transform venture capital into a force for good in the world. It's not to make tons of money scamming people or to like take equity positions in funds or anything. Like, we don't care about any of that. All we care about is fixing the vehicle by which innovation gets funded, so that we're backing things that matter, that make the world a better place, that is run by ethical people that care, right? And if we make money, great. If we don't make money, great. As long as that happens, that's why we're doing this. Now, it so happens that we're fortunate and we're doing well financially, right? Because we don't sell anything. Actually, you have to apply, and we'll power your firm, and we charge about half as much as anyone else, but we have 100% conversion rate. Everybody wants to work with us. And that's been lucrative for us, even though we charge half as much as everyone else, because of course they're out to make money and screw people, and we're just out to help. So we've taken a different view on the world. We've taken a different view on business. We're here not to make money, but to make the world a better place. And it just so happens, because that's all we care about, we happen to be doing well as well. But I appreciate all the questions that people asked about this, because we agree. We agree that venture's broken, it needs to be fixed, and we're going to be the solution. And I'll back anyone else that's part of the solution, help anyone else that's part of the solution. We have no pride of ownership here. We just want to see this industry do the right thing for humanity and fix the problems of the world. So with that said, thank you very much, everybody. Have a beautiful day. This was really lovely. I'll put the LinkedIn post up. Get any questions we weren't able to answer, and I'll try and answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.